Direct from Foxborough, Massachusetts, the gem of Norfolk County, and taped at the studios of Foxborough Cable Access. It's Foxborough Central. And here's your host, Bob Hickey.
Welcome to another episode of Foxborough Central. You interrupted my good conversation. That's right, I'll come to you. Thank you for taking a little bit of time to join with me and my guests as we talk about the people, events, and organizations that make Foxborough the gem of Norfolk County. I was talking about my conversation. I'm glad you've joined because I'm talking today with a couple folks who have really given a lot to the town these last few years. Paul DeFazio, nice to have you back with me again.
Thank you.
And my newest best friend, Tracy
Vasili.
Thank you so much. I'm so horrible with the names, but it's all good.
Not a problem.
Tracy and Paul are with me because they represent the current chairman, current vice chairman, future chairman of the Foxborough Advisory Committee, Citizens Advisory Committee. That's the official name, right?
Yes.
The AdCom.
Yeah, we don't do FinCom. A lot of different towns do the financial. Because we, and this was how it was explained to us recently by town moderator Frank Spillane, we do a little bit more than just look and crunch the numbers, because the numbers will always parlay themselves into the social fabric of, Foxborough. And you really kind of have to look at, okay, is it just a turf field or is it a bunch of numbers? And we as a committee need to come and weigh them both. So that's why in Foxborough, it was preferred to be called the Advisory Committee.
Well, that's very interesting, and as everybody knows, the town moderator is an elected position, and maybe that's why Frank Spillane does such a good job as our town moderator. And with that, there's more to being the town moderator than simply running the annual and the special town meetings. Part of that is soliciting and choosing members to be on the advisory committee.
Correct.
And that's how you two got on. Did you get a reach out to you, or did you reach out to town hall? How did you become a member of the AdCom, Paul?
For me, it was a good friend of mine who actually now is on the school committee, Mr. Stephen Uden, and he'll still owe me for a long time. No, it was a great thing, and Steve knew I was very interested in the town, and Steve's about as invested in his, does everything in this town humanly possible, and he said, this committee needs people like you. They need diversity. It can't just be accountants or lawyers or whatever. And, I said, well, what am I? I'm a law enforcement guy. What can I bring to the table? And, the more we talked about it, he said, you can bring a lot to the table. And I hope I have. And I know that people, we have a gentleman on the AdCom right now who's a carpenter. He brings so much to the table. So it doesn't necessarily matter what your occupation or your expertise is. You bring your open mind. And you bring your common sense and logic, and sure, you let the number crunchers, handle the beans. But as a citizen or a person in the town, you hope you know what's best, for the town at this point, and what can we afford, what can't we afford, what can you do today and not have to put off till tomorrow because it'll cost you that much more money tomorrow. It's that kind of dialogue that I don't care what you do. I don't care what your job is. If you care, you can be a great part of this advisory committee.
And when Mr. Uden's been on my program, of course, before, and Steve does a great job in his current role in the school committee, but when he reached out and put the touch on you, he was a member of the AdCom?
Correct.
Now, a big piece, and I'll absolutely get to how you came along, but a big piece of how any of us get involved with any form of town government, and I say that Foxborough is built on the back of its volunteers, and this committee is a volunteer committee, is that it's caring people who got into it somehow. And oftentimes, it's a matter of a neighbor looking someone in the eye and saying, hi, we need you. And that's true of any volunteer organization, whether it's with a civic group or an event or with town government. So how did you get involved? Who gave you the eye and said, hi, we need you?
Back a few years ago, during the selectmen's race, I was asked to be a member of Ginny Capola's election committee.
Okay.
So that got me a little exposure. And then, honestly, when people talked about AdCom, for those out in the business world, that means advertising and communications. So I wasn't quite sure what it was that this board was all about.
In some ways, it still is.
But I had the opportunity, in talking to Ginny as well as Lorraine, and then also Angela Davis, who's very active, in town
Absolutely.
and in state. to become interested, I had the opportunity to, put in an application, which is the process. You can get it right from the town website. It's then shared with Frank Spillane. He vets the applicants, has a discussion to, make sure that the person does come in with the open mind that Paul mentioned, and has the time available, because it is a commitment. And then, he makes the selections from there.
Excellent. And with that, there's still a piece of paper in the town report that is another way to volunteer for a town committee? I think there is, but if not, you can always check out the town website.
Yes.
And I'm not going to give the entire website because you can Google it up, and that is a term nowadays if you look in the dictionary, Googling. Just type in Town of Foxborough, and it'll bring you to our homepage. It's a very robust site. And the advisory committee, in fact, I went in there this morning just in preparation for this program, and I Googled up, just because I want to be able to say you could do it by doing it. And you go to Town of Foxborough, and the AdCom Advisory Committee has a board. They have all sorts of great links, your meeting agendas, they're all posted. You are a town committee, and you are under the open meeting laws, and so the meetings are open to the public. You typically meet, particularly during town meeting warrant time, you meet every week, right?
We meet every...
It can be pretty busy.
It's definitely busy. It's every Wednesday night, starting at 7 p.m. Location is to be determined based on availability around town.
We are having a bit of a meeting room crunch.
It's a good sign,
and
though.
that's another
It's a good
thing we
sign.
want to get to. I don't know if we're going to have enough time today, but I'd love to talk about town hall. I'd love to talk about future projects and the role the AdCom, of course, plays in it. I apologize for interrupting.
No, that's okay. But we do meet Wednesday nights. And then there's other meetings that we attend with the various department heads in terms of our liaison setup, where each of us works closely with less than a handful of departments to become familiar with them and their mission and what they're trying to accomplish. And then particularly if they have articles on the warrant, to be able to get more in depth with them. So it can be time intensive, especially as when we're heading into closely to a town meeting. But it's enjoyable, it's research. By no means have I ever dreaded Wednesday nights. There's topics that are very neutral, if you will, that it's just a matter of understanding and saying okay, and there's others that are more controversial and you need to ask a lot of questions on.
And it's a great point also that when you go to a town meeting, and I hope citizens do go to town meeting because it's a very important component of who we are as a government, but when you go, you don't have an opportunity, and maybe it's just because I'm not as intelligent as some others, but I do not know about the 29 articles. I really don't know if developer ABC has put in the necessary infrastructure to allow the town to release the bond. I don't know. That's what I depend upon the advisory committee to do, is to vet that and know that. And you have subject matter experts, so that way, and not each of you knows the particulars about that specific bond. I'm just using that as an example. But when we come to town meeting, the AdCom has had somebody research that issue, talk with the planning board, maybe even talk with the developer, or at least see the bond monies be ready for release. And you've made a recommendation to the other members of your committee's vetted it, voted upon it, and then that is what is presented to us at town meeting. The AdCom has looked at it, we've researched it, this is our opinion and why. And then that gives us information as regular citizens coming in to do our civic duty and vote at town meeting. So that's what the nuts and bolts role is, but as you pointed out, there's so much more to it. So we'll call that a non-sexy item, the release of a bond.
Sometimes it can be as simple as going to comparative towns. What did you do with this particular thing? You have the same demographic, you're about fiscally similar to Foxborough, and we try to gather enough information because we're doing what we think the town people would do if they had the time to do it. We're trying to give them the best look at this particular decision, and we make a recommendation. We say, we've looked at these 5 towns and here's how they've done it. We've talked to our department heads, which, people should have a lot of confidence in the town leaders here. I've gained that over the last 3 years. I know everybody likes to sit back and be an armchair politician or quarterback and criticize.
Well, we all have opinions, and some of us share those opinions, but
until you are really in there and you see the art of, okay, maybe we have to negotiate there. Maybe we're not getting exactly what I want, but we're going to get what we can to move it forward. It's a process that takes an awful lot of skill. And the town should feel good about our chiefs, our leaders, our new town manager. I think is going to do a terrific job. But if you get on the advisory committee, you will see all this, and and if there is somebody who is lacking, you will see that too. Our best effort is to do the work for the town people, so when they do show up, they have an understanding that people have, in fact, put time in thought. There's at least 10 of us generally there, or at a minimum 8 for a quorum, before we ever make a decision, which becomes a recommendation. And we are anything but, you may see a 10-0 or an 8-0 recommendation or vote. That doesn't mean we didn't go around the room for an hour and a half banging it out with each other, because that's what we're there to do, is to really vet these things. And if as long as we can, we're not all like-minded, but as long as at the end we're all doing what we feel is best and voting what we feel is best for the town, then you get to where you needed to be.
Well, I'll absolutely support that. I was a member of the Board of Selectmen back in 2002, 2008, and I had to appear before the advisory committee several times on different projects. And it was a robust discussion, and it wasn't one where it's a rubber stamp. It was certainly not a situation where I had a great idea and I'm saying you collectively, neither of you were on the board at the time, but you said, hey, Bob, that sounds great, we'll do it. There were some tough questions and some tough vetting, and went back and checked the numbers, checked the actions, checked the validity of some of the projects that we were doing. And so it is a very well thought out, if you will, committee, because what it's doing is asking those questions instead of having to go through a 19-hour discussion and research right on town meeting floor, which is not reasonable or possible. You do all that work ahead of time. So the recommendations that come out, even if we disagree with the recommendations, I'm not always agreed. None of us are supposed to always agree. You don't always have to agree with me. But they are all well researched. And it seems to be a system that works here in Foxborough. And it's positive that it's not just about the finances, because we do have a finance department that can put numbers together and create a spreadsheet. But there is so much more to the numbers than just the numbers.
Absolutely.
So when you became a member of the advisory committee, you got interested and you submitted an application, and Frank Splain met with you.
Yes.
And one of the things that he really wanted to know is if you're coming in, I'm sure, with a huge political bias.
Absolutely.
So tell us about this.
Well, I think you've got to walk in, and I think Paul alluded to it earlier in the conversation, with an open mind. Because, we're all human, and people walk in thinking, well, this is really strongly how I feel. And I mean, you do that, we're human, that's still innate in us, but to be able to walk in and be willing to see a topic discussed and vetted and be able to switch your opinion, if the evidence or the research suggests that you should, is very important. There's been many topics I've walked in saying, oh yes, I think I'm going to go one way or the other to myself. And then watching, my peers who I get to work with every Wednesday night research and share their findings and giving their own opinions after them doing the hands-on research, can be very influential, as it should be.
My first year on the committee, I was handed the article regarding should the town pay benefits to deployed military folks. I'm a disabled vet myself. I did my time in the Army, so obviously I let them know I do have a certain bias, but I will keep an open mind. I had to come to the conclusion, I had to show both sides of this, and of course I, like everybody in the town, wanted to do right by the veterans. However, to just adopt the state law, which was so vague and had so many pitfalls, a pitfall that, fine, if you're the city of Boston or whatever, you can find that you can bail yourself out.
Right.
But holes that could have sank this town financially if it ever got under wraps, had to come to the board and say, yeah, we want to try to do something, but this isn't the right thing. So even though your heart is in one place, you have to present both sides of it and be able to present it to the town that way. And I had to stand up in front of the town at town meeting.
That, yes.
And yeah, my heart was saying do something for the vets. and I still would love to see something done. But the head said this is not, that the state's law pertaining to this is not well written, and it could be troublesome. That's the kind of conundrum that you can find yourself in, but your job is not to promote a particular cause that's close to your heart. As a matter of fact, if you're agenda driven, you shouldn't be on this committee. If you say, I want to get on the advisory committee because this is the one thing in my heart that I think has to happen in this town, you're probably not the best for it, because now are you really going to have an open mind for that, or are you just going to push that one agenda? And quite honestly, that may not be yours, that may not be your article. It could be somebody else's.
You know, and that brings up such an excellent point, is that to be on the committee, there is a mission to, and the advisory committee provides a report to the annual town meeting and all special town meetings on budget appropriations and all of the municipal matters. In preparation for the town meeting, the advisory committee reviews the budget and warrant articles, meets with department heads, holds public meetings in order to work through department items, and makes a recommendation at the town meetings. But nowhere in here does it say that you proactively advocate for a position. That's what an elected position is for.
We're not policymakers.
Exactly, you're not policymakers, and that's something that, you know, I've had this discussion myself with several folks, and it's a great discussion to have, and I'm glad you're both here. And of course, I'm here with Tracy Vasili and Paul DeFazio, who are the chairman and the vice chairman, soon to be chairman of the advisory committee. It's not a political position. It is an advisory position, and it's not a fine line. It's a thick line. And that's why Frank Swain goes through the vetting process. And people who are coming in with a political agenda, this is probably not the best way to serve. There's other ways to serve. You can run for elected office. You can serve, I mean, if you're passionate about recreation and you want things for recreation, then get appointed to the rec board. That would be a great way for you to serve. If you think that the revolving fund for the recreation department should be doubled, well, then become a member of the recreation board and do the work necessary to make that happen. But the advisory committee is not that role.
Not at all. We're not town politicians. We're not policymakers, as Paul shared. And I think that's a misperception that a lot of folks have. We don't make decisions that are enacted. We do our research. We ask the questions, many of which are tough, and then make a recommendation to the town. So they, in turn, you know, who doesn't have the time to dive in as deeply as we've dived in and committed to diving in, can make a well-informed decision at town meeting.
And the reason every year there's a warrant article to create the revolving funds, and so that is something that your committee would look at, vet, see if it's valid, and then make a recommendation. So that's why I mentioned that one. So the topics that are before us seem as though they are going to continue to be before us. And right now we've got town hall, and what do we do about our town hall situation?
It's becoming Groundhog Day.
That's becoming exactly. I love it. In your 3 years on the AdCom, and are you up for reappointment? How does it work? Can you be reappointed? Can you do consecutive terms?
If the town moderator feels that your performance has been, satisfactory to the point where they can trust that you are open-minded and not agenda-driven, and you've done, they can ask you to return we've got Larry Thomas on the advisory committee, and the town should be very happy that he's bringing a lot of experience and wisdom. Don't always have to agree with everybody's, decision. Larry and I have voted opposite ways on a lot, but I respect every vote he's ever made because he cares about the town. We might just see things differently. But he was reappointed. Frank did offer to bring me back, and I don't know. Tracy seems to want me to come back. I have to see what's going on. But yeah, you can get reappointed. We have had people that have taken a year or two off and then come back. But it would be nice, and I don't mean this in a bad way. It would be nice that if the town moderator had a waiting list. And really should, because you know what? It's such an important part of the town, and personally, it's a great thing for you. You learn things, you become so much more knowledgeable and educated in the town, and even personally, I mean, I'll tell you straight out right now that part of my coming on was a little bit selfish. It wasn't just, I've been in public service for 30 years. I don't need to do much more for volunteerism or public service. I wanted to help, make my resume look a little different maybe when I go to that second career, and I wanted to have a little bit more on it that I maybe was lacking. And I thought, looking at things that the advisory committee would help, and it has. It's been terrific. So you can go on for personal reasons as long as it's not agenda driven, and you can benefit from it personally because it does show you as more rounded. In any time you can do something for your town or your community, I mean, that's just a good thing for you personally and everyone else.
Well, it's a huge commitment, but at the same time, it's a great way to get involved and to immerse yourself in town government. Many of our current leaders started off as AgCom, and Tina Bellinger, who's a great member of our school committee, Katie Adair, Steve Uden, they started off on the advisory committee, and I think they were the liaisons for the school department. And then as time went on, they realized that this would be something that they had a talent for and could contribute. And obviously the town agreed because they voted them in and elected them to be on the school committee. Current Board of Selectmen, you mentioned Lorraine Brew, Ginny Capola, and Jim DeVellis, and John Gray were all members of the advisory committee and are now in that leadership role. So it's a great way also to learn about government, and maybe it's a way to educate yourself so you're going in with a bit of base knowledge.
I think, the word mandatory is so strong, but it really is a great foundation before you go into elected office in this town, just to learn the different nuances, how it's run, the personalities. One thing I think I was not shocked about, but I was very pleased, was the level of importance the town administrators place on this board. It's a board that's going to ask a lot of questions of them, and sometimes they are difficult ones. So people tend to shy away and not view those groups too positively. But Randy Scollins and now Bill Keegan, I mean, they've done a phenomenal job. Sharon Watson of the planning board, just for example. It's been a pleasure to work with them, and the give and take that occurs between what's kind of seen as not an overseer board who asks the difficult questions has been quite positive.
Well, another piece of Foxborough is that we are local, and Randy Scollins was a member of that committee.
Yes, he was.
Before he became our finance director back in 2005. And he's been a great finance director for us. And being local, he definitely knew the players coming in, so I think that gave us a leg up. So much to talk about, so little time to do it. Let's talk about Town Hall. Not asking for a political opinion, but what is the process now going forward? We have a new town manager, Bill Keegan, who is also becoming part of the FCA family. And we had mentioned before about communication. A huge piece of any project is communication. That's why I'm glad you're on this program, Foxborough Central. We try to talk about the events and things that are going on, and we've certainly had several folks on to talk about prior town hall renovation and construction projects. But as we go forward with a new town manager, perhaps a new insight, new way of looking at it, there's going to be a process and a flow. Let's talk about the process and flow.
Well, the first thing that I liked that Bill Keegan did was he said, I know that this town and people like Bill Utner, Mr. Casparo, and so many people that have come and gone have done so much hard work and research. He wasn't just going to dismiss all that and say, okay, let's just start now. He took all that in. He's been holding meetings to include people who are not on boards, citizens, along with people who've been part of it, to try to just put everything together and say, okay, now let's look at this, where are we? Because let's not reinvent wheels that we've already paid for. I mean, what people have to understand is, I remember when I came on a few years back, they said, well, we've paid money for plans that are sitting in, dusty areas.
When I came on in 2002, Bill Casparo, who's our building commissioner and zoning enforcement officer, and also has an office in Town Hall.
Does a terrific job.
He does a fantastic job. He showed me these things. He says, Bob, you've got things going on here, so this is what it is. And he also mentioned Bill Yukna, who is the chairman of our municipal planning committee. I know there's a longer term to that, but that's essentially what it is. And also the chief finance officer of our school department. So we definitely have people in the know who were here and been working on this for a long time.
And as I said, it's got to be tough for them because it's Groundhog Day. It's like they keep having to re-educate and re-inform and, hey, did you do this? Yeah, we did that 5 years ago, and they just want to get it done. I think where we're at right now, to simplify it, is Mr. Keegan, the new town manager, has put together a team, a committee. He's brought in all the information. He's looked at it, and he's saying right now is, look, something has to be done. Nobody's disputing that this town hall cannot remain the way it is. We're going to do something. Let's do it the smartest way. Let's do it the way that is going to be, and the smartest way isn't always the cheapest way. And that's what sometimes people have to understand.
Yes.
And I, who've been in government so long, realize, we save a dime and spend $1 15 years later. So he's looking at it with a lot of people, and there's going to be a lot of, the other thing we said, be communicative to the town. Let the town know every step of the way. Get it out there so people understand. Don't wait till it's all done and say, here's what we've got. And he's listened. He's a great listener. And this project is going to be done with the town and with the people who've got the experience doing it and some people with new eyes. And I feel good about it. And I do think that this time around, the town will have the confidence that the presentation's right, the research has all been done, whether it's looking at leases, looking at rentals, because we've done this.
Yep.
And they're not cheap. They sound like they're cheap today, but they're not. So I have a lot of confidence that where we're going forward with this will be for the best of the town, whichever way it turns out.
We are so out of time. I'm going to get a last word from each of you. But before we do that, of course, I'm talking with Tracy Vasili and with Paul DeFazio, who are members of the advisory committee. If you out there, good citizens that we are, think that maybe you'd like to be part of this committee, you can go down to Town Hall, and the applications are available at the town clerk's office or at the town selectman's office. Probably at both offices. They put right next to each other to say, hey, I'd like to be on the AdCom. You fill it out, and then it goes to Frank Splain, who is our town moderator, and he'll contact you and do a little talk, and maybe you could be on the advisory committee and make a difference for the town. The big piece that is always on the table is time commitment, and is it too much? Is it too much?
We try to make it a little bit more efficient. We kind of talked with everybody on the committee and said, look, let's invoke a few self-reliant rules here, self-disciplined rules, and let's not be repetitive. Let's not be, we're not interrogators. We're not, we're not the district attorney interrogating people. We're asking questions. Try to pay attention. Don't be repetitive. Keep your question, to the point. Let the people talk. Don't go on your soapbox. You're not here, to let everybody know how brilliant and what you think. You're here to gather information. And I think that has certainly made the meetings, go from 3.5, 4-hour meetings down to, we've had meetings that have been relatively brief, but usually it's about an hour and a half commitment or so. And like I said, when it gets heavier, maybe it'll go 2.5. But it's a commitment for sure, but it's not something that is so painful that you say, well, I have to wait till the kids are all grown and left and I have nothing left to do in my life. And quite honestly, we need more people who are at different ages in order to see things differently. A 20-some-odd-year-old sees, all the needs of the seniors differently than the 60-year-old. And, this is part of the social fabric, and you have to have a balance on the committee.
Tracy, you get the last word.
It's a commitment, but it's nothing that's unmanageable. I do a great deal of travel for work. Until recently was a single mother and was absolutely able to balance it. This town has given me so much since living here since 2001 that I felt like it was, a chance for me to give back, not only to the town, but my friends and my families that live here. People do tend to see me around this time of the year when we're looking for applicants, and I'm sure they all duck in the nearest door. But I feel that strongly about it, or I wouldn't, approach people who I feel would be a good addition, whether they agree with me on points or not. So I think it's a commitment, but it's one that's incredibly worthwhile and fulfilling.
Tracy Vasili, Paul DeFazio, thank you so much for joining with me today. And I'm going to give you the eyeball. You should participate. You should get involved in some way, and maybe the advisory committee is the right way for you. The right way for me is to keep bringing these programs to you. Thank you for watching Foxborough Central, and I hope you check us out on your favorite cable station or at fcatv.org, where you can see a replay of this program by clicking on the Foxborough Central tab. We are so out of time, I can't believe it. Have a great day, Foxborough.